Well, 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 look what finally happened. The truth caught up. Not loudly, not dramatically, not in a way that stopped the world for a moment. It arrived quietly, the way truth always does. Patient, steady, unavoidable. And now there are people sitting with a realization they never expected to face. You were not who they thought you were. You were never who they thought you were. For years they carried a story about you in their minds. A story built from assumptions. A story built from limited information. A story built from moments they misunderstood. And they became so attached to that story that they stopped looking for the truth. Because once people become emotionally attached to an opinion, the truth becomes inconvenient. The truth becomes something they avoid, something they explain away, something they ignore, until reality becomes impossible to deny. And reality has become impossible to deny, because you are still here, still standing, still moving forward, still growing, still becoming. That alone is confusing for some people, because they were certain life would break you, certain disappointment would stop you, certain heartbreak would weaken you, certain failure would finish you, certain loneliness would eventually convince you to quit. But life had other plans, and so did you. What they never understood was that your silence was not surrender. Your silence was construction. While they thought nothing was happening, everything was happening. While they were watching the outside, the inside was changing. And the inside always matters more. A tree grows beneath the ground long before anyone notices it reaching toward the sky. Strength works the same way. Character works the same way. Healing works the same way. The most important growth happens where nobody can see it. That is why so many people miss it. They judge based on appearances. They judge based on timing. They judge based on temporary circumstances. They judge based on what looks true instead of what actually is true. And because of that, they often underestimate the very people who are quietly becoming unstoppable. People like you. The truth is, you have survived things nobody knows about. You have carried burdens nobody could see. You have fought battles that never made it into conversation. You have faced fears that never appeared on the surface. And somehow, you kept moving. Not perfectly, not effortlessly, not without struggle, but you kept moving. And that matters more than most people realize. Because survival is not always dramatic. Sometimes survival looks ordinary. Sometimes survival looks like getting through another day. Sometimes survival looks like choosing not to quit. Sometimes survival looks like carrying pain without letting pain become your identity. And for a long time, that was exactly what you were doing. Surviving, learning, growing, building, one day at a time, one lesson at a time, one decision at a time. Nobody applauded those moments. Nobody celebrated them. Nobody even noticed them. But they mattered. More than anyone knew. There is something most people never understand about transformation. It is rarely visible while it is happening. People expect change to announce itself. They expect a dramatic moment, a breakthrough, a miracle, a single event that suddenly turns everything around. But real transformation is quieter than that. Much quieter. It happens in ordinary moments. Moments nobody photographs. Moments nobody applauds. Moments nobody remembers except the person living through them. It happens when you choose discipline instead of excuses. It happens when you choose growth instead of blame. It happens when you choose patience instead of panic. Again, and again, and again. Those choices seem small in the moment, almost insignificant. But over time they become a force powerful enough to change an entire life. That is what happened to you. Not all at once. Slowly, painfully, patiently. You were becoming stronger while nobody was paying attention. You were becoming wiser while nobody was looking. You were becoming more certain of who you are while others were still trapped inside outdated opinions. And that created a gap. A gap between perception and reality. A gap between who people thought you were and who you were actually becoming. At first the gap was small, almost invisible. Then it grew. Month after month. Year after year. Until eventually the difference became impossible to ignore. That is when things started changing. People began noticing. Not because you announced it. Not because you demanded attention. Because the evidence became impossible to hide. Your energy changed. Your confidence changed. Your presence changed. There was something different about you. Something quieter. Something deeper. Something more grounded. The interesting part is that many people could feel the difference before they could explain it. They noticed the calm. They noticed the certainty. They noticed the strength. But they could not figure out where it came from. The answer was simple. It came from surviving things they never knew about. It came from carrying weights they never had to carry. It came from lessons learned in places where nobody else was present. That kind of growth cannot be purchased, cannot be borrowed, cannot be copied. It has to be earned. And you earned it. Every difficult day contributed to it. Every disappointment contributed to it. Every setback contributed to it. Even the moments that felt unfair. Especially those moments. Because pain has a strange way of revealing things. Pain reveals what is fragile. Pain reveals what is real. Pain reveals what truly matters. And when you stop running from it long enough to learn from it, pain becomes one of the greatest teachers life can offer. That does not mean it feels good. It does not mean you enjoy it. It means you refuse to waste it. You refuse to let suffering leave without teaching you something valuable. That mindset changed everything. While others were waiting for circumstances to improve, you were improving yourself. While others were complaining about conditions, you were adapting. While others were focused on appearances, you were focused on foundations. And foundations matter. Because when storms arrive, and they always arrive, foundations determine what survives. A weak foundation collapses. A strong foundation remains. People only notice the building. Very few people pay attention to what is underneath it. But the building is never the secret. The foundation is. And your foundation was being built in silence. One difficult choice at a time. One lonely night at a time. One lesson at a time. That is why the people who doubted you are confused now. They are looking at the results without understanding the process. They are seeing the strength without seeing the struggle. They are seeing the confidence without seeing the years of uncertainty that came before it. They are seeing the victory without seeing the sacrifices. And because they missed the process, the outcome feels unbelievable. But it is not unbelievable. It is earned. Every bit of it. You paid for it with patience. You paid for it with discipline. You paid for it with perseverance. You paid for it during moments when nobody else would have continued. That is why your growth feels different. Because it is real. Not borrowed. Not performed. Not temporary. Real. And real things have a weight to them. Presence. Permanence. Something that cannot be faked. That is what people are sensing now. Whether they admit it or not. Whether they understand it or not. They are seeing the result of years of invisible work. And for many of them, that realization is difficult to ignore. Now let us talk about the part nobody likes to admit. The part that arrives late at night. The part that shows up when distractions disappear. The part people try to avoid because it forces them to face themselves. Regret. Not your regret. Because there comes a moment when people realize they misjudged someone. And that realization is heavier than most people expect. First, it is easy to dismiss. Easy to ignore. Easy to explain away. But truth has a strange habit of returning. Again. And again. And again. Until it can no longer be avoided. That is where some people find themselves now. They remember the assumptions. They remember the conversations. They remember the conclusions they reached about you. And now they are forced to compare those conclusions with reality. The problem? Reality keeps winning. Every time. The version of you they expected to fail did not fail. The version of you they expected to quit did not quit. The version of you they expected to disappear did not disappear. Instead, you kept moving, kept building, kept growing. And every step forward became another challenge to everything they once believed. That creates discomfort, because nobody enjoys discovering they were wrong, especially when they were confident, especially when they were vocal, especially when they built part of their identity around being right. But reality does not negotiate with pride. Reality simply reveals, slowly, patiently, until there is nowhere left to hide. Think about how many people change themselves just to fit in. How many people abandon their truth to gain approval? How many people shrink themselves to make others comfortable? How many people spend years performing a version of themselves they do not even recognize? It happens every day, because acceptance feels safe. Approval feels safe. Belonging feels safe. But safety comes at a cost when it requires you to betray who you are. You learned that. Maybe not willingly, maybe not easily, but you learned it. You learned that losing yourself is far more painful than losing approval. You learned that pretending eventually becomes exhausting. You learned that authenticity may cost you relationships, but in the end it gives you something far more valuable. Peace. Real peace. Not the kind that comes from everyone liking you. The kind that comes from knowing you are no longer at war with yourself. That peace changed you. You stopped chasing every opinion, stopped defending every misunderstanding, stopped carrying every judgment, stopped trying to control how others viewed you, and something incredible happened. You became lighter, stronger, clearer, not because life got easier, because you stopped carrying things that were never yours to carry. That is why your energy feels different now. Because people can sense when someone has finally put down unnecessary weight. They can sense when someone is no longer living for approval. They can sense when someone has become comfortable in their own skin. And that kind of confidence is rare. Not loud confidence. Not arrogant confidence. Quiet confidence. The kind that does not need attention. The kind that does not need validation. The kind that does not need permission. The kind that comes from surviving enough life to know exactly who you are. That confidence unsettles people. Not because it is wrong, because it reminds them of what they have not yet found within themselves. And that is why some people keep watching. They are trying to understand, trying to figure out how someone they underestimated became someone they respect, trying to understand how someone they doubted became someone they cannot ignore. The answer is simple. You stopped trying to become who they wanted, and started becoming who you were meant to be. That decision changed everything. Because the moment you stop living according to other people's expectations, you finally have enough energy to build your own future. And that is exactly what you did. Piece by piece, day by day, choice by choice, you built a life rooted in something deeper than approval, something stronger than popularity. Something more permanent than reputation. You built it on truth. And truth always outlasts perception. Always. The funny thing is, most people spend years trying to protect an image, while you spent years building substance. And substance always wins in the long run. Always. That is why you no longer need to prove anything. The proof already exists. It exists in your growth, your resilience, your discipline, your wisdom, your peace, your ability to continue despite everything that tried to stop you. Those things speak louder than explanations ever could. Louder than arguments. Louder than opinions. Louder than criticism. Louder than doubt. The truth is already speaking, and people are finally starting to hear it. And now, here you are. Not at the beginning. Not in the middle of the confusion. Not standing in the ruins wondering if you will survive. You are standing on the other side of something that once looked impossible. Take a moment and really think about that. There was a time when the pain felt endless. A time when the uncertainty felt unbearable. A time when you genuinely did not know how the story would end. There were nights when your mind was exhausted. Days when your heart felt heavy. Moments when quitting seemed reasonable. Moments when giving up seemed easier than continuing. Yet somehow, you continued. You kept walking. You kept showing up. You kept taking another step when another step was the last thing you wanted to take. That matters. More than you realize. Because character is not built when life is easy. Anyone can appear confident when everything is working. Anyone can appear brave when there is nothing to fear. But when life applies pressure, that is when truth appears. And pressure revealed something extraordinary about you. It revealed that your spirit was stronger than your circumstances. It revealed that your identity was deeper than other people's opinions. It revealed that your future was larger than your setbacks. It revealed that your potential was greater than anyone imagined, including you, because if we are being honest, there were moments when even you doubted yourself. Moments when fear whispered convincing lies. Moments when failure looked permanent. Moments when disappointment felt final. Moments when your confidence disappeared. Moments when your faith weakened. Moments when you questioned whether all the effort was worth it. You remember those moments. Of course you do. They shaped you, but they did not define you. That is the difference. Many people become trapped inside their hardest chapter. You did not. You learned from it. You grew through it. You carried the lessons forward without carrying the limitations. And because of that, you became someone different. Not different in the way people think. Not a completely new person. A more complete version of yourself. A version stripped of illusions. A version stripped of unnecessary fear. A version stripped of dependency on approval. A version stripped of the need to constantly explain who you are. What remains is something powerful. Something solid. Something real. The real you. And the real you does not need applause. The real you does not need validation. The real you does not need permission. Because the real you has already survived too much to be controlled by opinions. Think about everything you know now that you did not know before. You know your strength. You know your resilience. You know your capacity to endure. You know your ability to adapt. You know your ability to rebuild. You know your ability to keep going when circumstances suggest otherwise. That knowledge is priceless. Because once a person truly discovers what they are capable of, fear loses much of its power. The unknown loses much of its power. Doubt loses much of its power. Why? Because you have evidence. Evidence collected through experience. Evidence collected through struggle. Evidence collected through survival. You no longer believe you are strong. You know you are. You no longer hope you can overcome challenges. You know you can. You no longer wonder whether you can rebuild. You have already done it. And that certainty changes everything. It changes how you walk, how you speak, how you think, how you approach opportunities, how you approach obstacles, how you approach life itself. People notice that, even when they cannot explain it. They notice the calm, the stability, the confidence, the presence. They notice that something about you feels different. And they are right. Something is different. You stopped waiting for the world to confirm your value. You discovered it yourself. That is the turning point. That is the moment everything changes. Not when others finally believe in you. When you finally believe in yourself. Because external validation is temporary. Comes and goes. People change their minds. Opinions change. Trends change. Crowds change. But self-respect remains. Self-respect becomes a foundation nobody can take from you. And that foundation is what you stand on today. The beautiful thing is that your story is not finished. Not even close. This is not the ending. This is the beginning of a completely different chapter. A chapter where you stop looking backward. A chapter where you stop measuring yourself against old versions of yourself. A chapter where you stop carrying the weight of past misunderstandings. A chapter where you focus on what is possible instead of what happened. Because the future does not care who doubted you. The future does not care who underestimated you. The future does not care who failed to see your value. The future only cares about what you choose next. And if your past has proven anything, it has proven that you are capable of far more than anyone expected, including yourself. So walk forward. not with arrogance, not with bitterness, not with a need for revenge. Walk forward with certainty. Walk forward with wisdom. Walk forward with gratitude for every lesson that shaped you. Walk forward knowing that every challenge you survived became part of your strength. Walk forward knowing that every setback taught you something valuable. Walk forward knowing that every difficult season prepared you for something greater. And most importantly, walk forward knowing that you no longer need to convince anyone of who you are. The truth already speaks for itself. It speaks through your actions. It speaks through your growth. It speaks through your discipline. It speaks through your character. It speaks through your resilience. It speaks through the life you continue to build every single day. The people who doubted you may finally understand, or they may not. It does not matter anymore, because your journey was never about proving them wrong. It was about proving to yourself that you could remain true to who you are no matter what happened. And you did. You stayed. You endured. You learned. You grew. You rebuilt. You rose. Again. And again. And again. Until the person staring back at you today became undeniable. This is your proof. This is your evidence. This is your reminder. You survived what was supposed to break you. You learned from what was supposed to defeat you. You grew through what was supposed to stop you. And now you carry a strength that cannot be borrowed, bought, or imitated. It was earned. One day. One lesson. One battle. One decision at a time. The truth was never fragile. The truth was never lost. The truth was simply waiting for time to reveal it. And now it has. So lift your head. Take a breath. Keep moving forward. Because the strongest version of your story is not behind you. It is still being written. And the next chapter may be the one that changes everything.